Poetry is nearer to vital truth than history. The excessive increase of anything causes a reaction in the opposite direction. Ignorance of all things is an evil neither terrible nor excessive, nor yet the greatest of all, but great cleverness and much learning, if they be accompanied by a bad training, are a much greater misfortune. All the gold which is under or upon the earth is not enough to give in exchange for virtue. The most virtuous are those who content themselves with being virtuous without seeking to appear so. Apply yourself both now and in the next life. Without effort, you cannot be prosperous. Though the land be good, you cannot have an abundant crop without cultivation. He who steals a little steals with the same wish as he who steals much, but with less power. As the builders say, the larger stones do not lie well without the lesser. When the tyrant has disposed of foreign enemies by conquest or treaty, and there is nothing more to fear from them, then he is always stirring up some war or other in order that the people may require a leader. No law or ordinance is mightier than understanding. The direction in which education starts a man will determine his future in life. The most important part of education is proper training in the nursery. No one knows whether death, which people fear to be the greatest evil, may not be the greatest good. All things will be produced in superior quantity and quality, and with greater ease, when each man works at a single occupation in accordance with his natural gifts and at the right moment without meddling with anything else. No one ever teaches well who wants to teach, or governs well who wants to govern. Any man may easily do harm, but not every man can do good to another. They certainly give very strange names to diseases. No man should bring children into the world who is unwilling to persevere to the end in their nature and education. Whatever deceives men seems to produce a magical enchantment. Democracy passes into despotism. No one is a friend to his friend who does not love in return. It is clear to everyone that astronomy at all events compels the soul to look upwards and draws it from the things of this world to the other. Cunning is but the low mimic of wisdom. I have hardly ever known a mathematician who was capable of reasoning. For the introduction of a new kind of music must be shunned as imperiling the whole state, since styles of music are never disturbed without affecting the most important political institutions. It is right to give every man his due. Wonder is the feeling of the philosopher, and philosophy begins in wonder. Truth is the beginning of every good to the gods and of every good to men. The community which has neither poverty nor riches will always have the noblest principles. No evil can happen to a good man, either in life or after death. Knowledge becomes evil if the aim be not virtuous. The blame is his who chooses, God is blameless. We ought to esteem it of the greatest importance that the fictions which children first hear should be adapted in the most perfect manner to the promotion of virtue. The curse of me and my nation is that we always think things can be bettered by immediate action of some sort, any sort rather than no sort. No trace of slavery ought to mix with the studies of the freeborn man. No study, pursued under compulsion, remains rooted in the memory. The eyes of the soul of the multitudes are unable to endure the vision of the divine. Our object in the construction of the state is the greatest happiness of the whole, and not that of any one class. Entire ignorance is not so terrible or extreme in evil, and is far from being the greatest of all. Too much cleverness and too much learning, accompanied with ill bringing up, are far more fatal. Philosophy is the highest music. I never did anything worth doing by accident, nor did any of my inventions come by accident. They came by work. To go to the world below, having a soul which is like a vessel full of injustice, is the last and worst of all the evils. The highest reach of injustice is to be deemed just when you are not. And what, Socrates, is the food of the soul? Surely, I said, knowledge is the food of the soul. Philosophy begins in wonder. If particulars are to have meaning, there must be universals. Hardly any human being is capable of pursuing two professions or two arts rightly. There must always remain something that is antagonistic to good. Wealth is well known to be a great comforter. How can you prove whether at this moment we are sleeping and all our thoughts are a dream, or whether we are awake and talking to one another in the waking state? The God's service is tolerable, man's intolerable. Then not only custom, but also nature affirms that to do is more disgraceful than to suffer injustice, and that justice is equality. Man never legislates, but destinies and accidents, happening in all sorts of ways, legislate in all sorts of ways. Knowledge is true opinion. States are as the men they grow out of human characters. Those who intend on becoming great should love neither themselves nor their own things, but only what is just, whether it happens to be done by themselves or others. I would fain grow old learning many things. The good is the beautiful. We ought to fly away from earth to heaven as quickly as we can, and to fly away is to become like God as far as this is possible, and to become like Him is to become holy, just, and wise. I exhort you also to take part in the great combat, which is the combat of life, and greater than every other earthly conflict. Man is a wingless animal with 2 feet and flat nails. Nothing can be more absurd than the practice that prevails in our country of men and women, not following the same pursuits with all their strengths and with one mind. For thus, the state, instead of being whole, is reduced to half. Poets utter great and wise things, which they do not themselves understand. Injustice is censured because the censors are afraid of suffering, and not from any fear which they have of doing injustice. Not to help justice in her need would be an impiety. When a benefit is wrongly conferred, the author of the benefit may often be said to injure. Then not only an old man, but also a drunkard becomes a second time a child. There is no such thing as a lover's oath. It is a common saying, and in everybody's mouth, that life is but a sojourn. Excess of liberty, whether it lies in state or individuals, seems only to pass into excess of slavery. A state arises, as I conceive, out of the needs of mankind. No one is self-sufficing, but all of us have many wants.